the Bitcoin Piece, the music podcast. I'm your host, DJ Valerie B. Love, and I have a very, very special guest today, a reformed hedge fund manager. Oh my goodness, what does that mean? And the co-founder of Look Glass Education. This is awesome, wonderful James Lavish. Welcome, James. Thanks for being on.
Well, thank you for having me. I like your style. This is fun. A little bit of a relaxed atmosphere, and we're live, so that's always fun.
Yeah, it's totally like I want to bring Bitcoin to everybody who wants to learn about it in a simplified way, and because that's kind of how I learn, and obviously that's how you share it with your Substack. And let's just talk about that. What's your jam with Bitcoin? How did you get involved? How did you become a formed hedge fund manager and
Oh
now a
God, do you want to
Bitcoiner?
really hear this? You want the whole story?
The whole
Well,
story,
I mean,
nothing but the truth.
well, some of your listeners might know. Some people have seen my other podcasts. May have heard that I actually started out when I was in college. I was young. I was a hockey player. I was an ice hockey player, and so I played hockey in college for 4 years. And at the end of that 4 years, everything was. Let me back up. In hockey, for the NHL, you get drafted when you're 18. So,
Mm.
I got drafted by the Boston Bruins back in 1989. Oh God, long time ago.
You're still younger than me, James. So.
Yeah, I don't look it. So and anyways, so I played hockey for 4 years, and I fully expected that I was going to go into the NHL. I mean, I was playing for a school that wasn't really known for hockey, but we had a good team. We had really good players, and we actually were at the time we were one of the best teams in modern history for Yale, and so I was fully committed. That's what I was doing. I mean, I studied, I did well, and all that. There's no athletic scholarships at Yale, so you do have to keep up with your academics, and but as it happens, senior year, I'm just playing in a regular game, and we're playing against St. Lawrence. It's right around Christmas time, and I get a pass from behind the net, and I go take a step, and my left foot, the left skate, catches in a groove in the ice, and I get hit, and my knee blows out,
Oh,
and
dude.
it was over in a heartbeat. So
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
So
awful.
your whole world,
So
that whole
my whole
vision
world
of your path is now deleted, and you have to go
collapsed.
figure it out. What happened? Like it was your senior year and you thought you
Yeah.
were going to be rocking the NHL after that. So,
Well, yeah, and I mean, I was on the national team. The national team is like an extended version of the U.S. Olympic team, but we're training to go to the Olympics, so they pick the team from the national team, and so that's gone. I try to play with. I get traded. I get released and picked up by the New York Rangers, and I try out with that team. They go on to win the Stanley Cup that year without me. So yeah, so it was a rough year. I mean, I my identity, exactly what you just said. My identity was completely uh it was whitewashed complete. Like there was nothing left. There was just I didn't know what I was going to do, because my fallback plan at the time was, well, if I don't make the NHL, I'm in tip top shape. I'm very athletic, and I've been studying for 4 years at a college that it would make sense to do this. I thought I would go to the FBI, so I was going to go to law school and then the FBI. But then I had blown out my knee, and I was not. I had to have surgery, and I was nowhere near what I had been athletically. And I thought, well, I don't want to be stuck behind a desk. I'd want to be in the field. So that blew up. And so I went to New York and started talking to some friends, some guys I had played hockey with or against, and just trying to figure out what they were doing and what I could do. And I had a few of them. They kind of pulled me in. They said, "Well, don't go the investment banking route. Don't go into law. Don't come see what we do." And so I started sleeping on friends' sofas. I mean, it's so embarrassing. I had no money. I had college debt. I had credit card debt. I thought it was all going to be taken care of with one, signing, and it would be all great. But
Wow.
naively, I didn't realize that the world does not, mold to your path. If sometimes you just have to go with the flow. So so I'm going with the flow. I'm sleeping on friends' sofas, and they're like, "You've got to figure out what you're doing." And I'm literally getting kicked out of my friend's apartment at the time, and I get an offer from this British investment bank, but the trading and investment side, not the analyst side, not the ones who were doing the big deals, but the ones who were actually buying and selling securities. I was like, I really know nothing about Wall Street. I didn't know anything. So I go, and my job, basically it filters down. I end up on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And so here is like my first job. I'm 22 years old. I'm on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And this is back when it was just absolute mayhem. You remember, you saw the movie Wall Street. It was chaos. Paper flying everywhere, people running all over the place, yelling, screaming. Yeah, it was nuts. And but the thing is I had played hockey, so I was used to this high intense atmosphere, like this really super fast and competitive environment, and reading and reacting and adjusting really quickly. And whoever did it the quickest, if they did it right, they got the best trade. So anyway, so it actually kind of fit where I was in that time of life, and it worked out well. I was good at math, and I could work under pressure. And so it worked out, thankfully. So that's how I got onto Wall Street. And from there, if you had, I know I'm just going on a monologue. So
no, I want to hear it. I want to hear how you got on, and then how you got off, and why you got off, and where you're at now. Because that's important for folks to understand the arc.
Yeah, it's definitely important. So so now I'm on Wall Street, and I'm doing this super mathematical thing with ADR arbitrage. It's buying and selling foreign securities on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. You have currencies, you have stamp tax, you have baskets of securities, and it's pretty it's for a kid, it's complicated. I could teach it to you. It's not that hard, but whoever did it the fastest got the trade, like I was saying. But we didn't have Excel spreadsheets. We had a calculator, and that was it.
An abacus.
You're like in an abacus, right? You're like, exactly. You're pushing the beads, and you're like, 2.38. Anyway, so because I was doing that, I got some attention from hedge funds. And at the time, this is 1994, 1995, hedge funds were pretty much nothing. They were like the leftovers from the Michael Milken and Ivan Boesky days. They were kind of seen as, I don't know what they're doing over there. They don't have real rules. They're not registered. They're not overseen by the SEC like everybody else back in the day. And so, but I got some attention from them, and I got hired to do something that's called merger arbitrage, which is like ADR arbitrage. You're doing the same thing with two companies that are going to merge. You're buying one security, you're selling the right ratio of the other security. If the merger closes, you collect the spread. It collapses and you collect it. If it doesn't close, you get killed. But that's why you do, many of them throughout the year. Anyway, so I was doing that, and I got an opportunity to work at a large hedge fund that was really growing rapidly down in Texas. So now I'm moving from New York City down to Fort Worth. If you had told me my life was going to go from New York City, the Florida New York Stock Exchange, to Dallas, actually to Fort Worth is where I ended up moving, all in a span of 4 years, I would have been like, my vision was, I'm going to be on the Bruins. I'm going to be in the NHL. That's where I'm going to be. But here I am working for a hedge fund, trading arbitrage in Fort Worth, Texas. So now, I'm surrounded by guys who are talking about hunting and fishing, and I'm like, what have I've just moved out of New York City into what? I had this tiny little apartment. It was a little box, no bigger than this screen, really. Okay. and it had the bathroom and the kitchen and the living room all in it. And it was $800 a month. Back then, that was a lot of money, you know. I got married. We had a nicer apartment, but for the same money we were paying in New York, we got for this little 800 square foot apartment in New York, we got like a 5,000 square foot house with a pool and like a
Oh my God.
quarter of an acre yard in Fort Worth. I was like, I don't think we ever used the pool, but I was like, I want space. You know, I was so sick of being next to people. They were just like everywhere, like right up against you in New York. So I was like, give me a little bit.
Yeah.
So anyway, so the New York kid ends up in Fort Worth.
Wow.
And that is kind of how I ended up being really in hedge funds. So I'll pause there if you have any questions, but I could keep going.
You moved to Fort Worth, you're in hedge fund land, you're hunting, you're having this new spacious lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah.
And did you wake up to Bitcoin?
All right.
Like,
So
how did you get in and turn from hedge fund guy and you managed like billions of dollars, right? Like you're pretty
I had to get reformed first. So what had
get the
happened,
reform.
yeah, so I had to be reformed. So bless his heart. So I've got this. I'm at this hedge fund that ends up being one of the biggest hedge funds in the world, and I'm the head arbitrage trader. You know, I work with a portfolio manager, but I had been working my way toward getting what's called the CFA, and instead of going to get an MBA in investments, you can do something that's called the CFA. It's a Chartered Financial Analyst, and it's super challenging. It's a three years in succession of tests. If you fail one, you have to take it over the next year. Like back then, they didn't offer it every 6 months like they do now. So it was like if you fail, you're set back a whole year, and they recommend that you study about 300 or 400 hours per level. So it's all done on your own, and you sit down in this super stressful test. I mean, yeah. So I had just been through that, and I was like, well, I'm ready to be a portfolio manager. And so I step out from that firm and start my own hedge fund under an umbrella with a billionaire out in Dallas. And so I'm seated with some good capital. We're going, and everything's going great. And I've got my trade set up, and then the bottom falls out of the market, and interest rates collapse. And when you're doing arbitrage, everything is keyed off of your Fed funds or LIBOR rate. So when there's no rate, then you have nothing to key off of, and your spreads go down to near zero, and it doesn't work. So after fighting that for almost 2 years, I just shut that up. I shut it down. I was completely burned out, obliterated. My marriage had suffered. I hadn't seen my kids much. I mean, I got absolutely burned out, blown up, burned out. I was so tired. We didn't lose money, but we didn't make enough money to keep going.
Yeah.
So I stepped away. It took about 18 months off. And I decided I wasn't going to go at that pace ever again. So this is where my reformation kind of begins, right? So I go and I help a friend start a hedge fund private equity firm in the greater firm of his father's firm. So they're a big money manager in Fort Worth. This is the funny thing. So I'll tell you this really quickly because it's just the story of my life. So I moved from New York to Fort Worth, right? So now I don't have that commute of getting on the train and going down to the Tribeca to get into the office, and from the Upper East Side down to the Lower West Side is just
gosh,
it's awful. So anyway, so I go to Fort Worth. Now I have a 3-minute commute. Well, the firm grows rapidly. They moved to Dallas. So now I've got a commute going to Dallas. I'm like, okay, I've got to move. So I moved to Dallas to be with them. And that's where I started my hedge fund. And then that hedge fund, I walk away, I close up shop. And then the firm that I helped my friend start is back in Fort Worth. So now I'm driving back to Fort Worth. So I just can't get away from the commute, I think I listened to like 50 to 100 books a year. It was crazy. So,
Yeah, go Audible. Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
it was before all the podcasts were so great. So,
Oh god.
anyways, I'm I help my counterpart start this firm, and I was with him for the last 15 years, and we built this private equity hedge fund, and then he built out the private equity unit. And the long story short is, go back to Bitcoin. So I'm there. It's 2018, and I've got some discretionary capital, and I wanted to do something that was a little bit riskier. I mean, I had real estate, I had just long only public equities, I had private equity, I had venture capital, gold. I was like, I wanted to move out on the risk curve a little bit. I wanted to do something that was just a little bit different. And so I'd heard about this Bitcoin thing. I was like, well, I'm an institutional money manager, so I'm going to go talk to the experts, the technology analysts on Wall Street.
Oops.
Biggest mistake I've ever made in investing, right there. I
Oh
talked to
wow.
who I thought were the experts, and they were not. They, to the T, every single one of them warded me off and said, it's a scam, it's a Ponzi scheme, there's nothing to it, there's no fundamentals, there's no valuation for it, so you're just buying it hoping that other people get into it. I'm like, okay, thank God. Thank you so much for saving me. Thank you.
Scenes.
I mean, what a mistake,
Oh,
right? So it goes from,
you
it
don't
went,
know what you don't know. That's the thing.
yeah,
Like, you don't know what you don't know in this old fiat system. It's like, if that's what you're taught and you're obviously entrenched in, you think like, well, these guys know more than I do, so
yeah,
I'm going to ask them. That's natural.
yeah,
But I think that's an thing base right now moving forward for all of us. And so okay, I want to keep hearing this story. We'll unpack it.
yeah. No, that's exactly right. Is that the word that you use that is so key is entrenched. That's the word. I
Mhm.
was so entrenched in that world. I was like, oh yeah, don't touch crypto. It's for drug dealers and sex traffickers. So I was like, oh god. So anyway, flash forward, Bitcoin goes from 3,500. It starts marching back up because it had been in the 20s. It came all the way back down when I was looking at it, and then thank God I didn't do that. I ended up taking 2 slugs of capital. I put one in a venture deal that it's still going. It's doing well enough. They just had a Series B, but then another slug I put in the bigger slug. Unfortunately, I put into a gas deal that I got. I trusted the manager that I worked with. I'd known him for very, very long, but he wasn't overseeing it the way that he said he was. And the manager, the CEO, the CFO didn't do what they said they were going to do. So I lost all of the money in that, all of it. It went to zero.
Ugh.
So yeah. So if I had put that in Bitcoin,
Mhm.
I mean, I I would have a different life. So
Yeah.
anyway, but that's fine. So everybody buys Bitcoin when they're supposed to buy Bitcoin, right? So
Exactly.
flash forward now, it's the pandemic hits 2020, and it's March, and I'm remarried. So my marriage had just collapsed after having the hedge fund. It just was never going to work. So I'm remarried, and I'm going back and forth with my wife to Las Vegas. I'm in Dallas, she's in Las Vegas. We have kids. We go back and forth when we have the kids and when we don't, right? So if you ever seen the movie Up in the Air with George Clooney, and they have their laptops up against each other, and like, well, where are you going to be here? Where are you going? That was us. Like, when are you going to? So, and we just did. I mean, we were American Express Platinum on our own dollar
Oh gosh.
for years, because we flew back and forth so much. So it was crazy. So, anyways, so pandemic hits. It's March, first week of March, and she leaves, goes back to Las Vegas, and I'm in Dallas, and we get locked down in separate cities for 100 days.
Oh god.
Yeah. So here I am in Dallas. I've got my kids back and forth, but my daughter's about to go off to college. My son is already in college, so they're both going to be gone. little did I know that it was going to get worse, and one of them was going to have to, not actually go to campus that year. But anyways, they're off to college. So I pack up my car, I drive out to Las Vegas, and I never went back. I was like, I can't, I just can't anymore. So, so I worked it out with my firm to train somebody, actually train a few people to take my position. And I've been here ever since. But during that time, my son, who's now at that point, he's a sophomore in college. And he's like, Dad, I really think you ought to give this crypto thing another look. I was like, this crypto thing. Okay. So I was like, yeah, it's really gotten a lot of attention since we started printing money like madmen. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was like, okay. So I dug back in. He convinced me to buy some Ethereum. Okay. And so he really wanted me to buy Ethereum and Cardano, his group. And he's a smart kid. And this group of kids at Cornell, it's a good school. Like they're smart. They're like, this is where the things are going. This is the hot thing. At the time, for them, Bitcoin was boring. It was like, it doesn't do anything. This other stuff is, so I buy Ethereum and I'd start doing my research, and I'm like, I think I want to be in Bitcoin. So I move everything over to Bitcoin. And at the time, I didn't know anybody in the industry, in this ecosystem, in our community. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
people get upset when you say the Bitcoin community, but Bitcoiners think alike. They talk to each other. Like, it's just different. So I didn't know anybody, but I started doing my research a different way. So I started reading blog posts, stuff that was out on different kinds of publications. I stayed away from mainstream media as much as I could. I read the white paper. I started getting on Twitter and following people. Now, my wife's an author, so I'd been on Twitter, but I was only on there to kind of retweet her stuff when she had a new book coming out or something. I would say, yeah. And I was still am following authors and followed by a bunch of authors, but I didn't have any followers that kept up with me. I didn't say anything. I was like dormant. Like, it says I've been there since 2009. The truth is I've been there since 2021, like September, October. Like I
Wow.
just got on a few months ago. Like, I just got on and started talking to people and figuring out what was going on. And so, so I'm watching podcasts. I've watched Michael Saylor, of course, as everybody does. You can't get into Bitcoin without seeing Michael Saylor somewhere, right? So I'm watching Michael Saylor, and I'm getting it. I'm like, okay, I really understand. Like, this is special, unique. This is a separate asset. This is something that you can set apart from everything else.
Yeah.
All right. So I kind of get it. But I'm not fully there yet. I still just, there's something about that old legacy system that just is, brainwashed me, and I just can't put all the pieces together. Right. That you know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about.
So, yeah. So I get,
yeah, keep going. I want to hear. So you're there, you're starting to get it. Like, what I want to know, like, what, obviously there's so many tentacles. Do our own research and read the books and watch the videos and podcasts and stuff. Like, what was your tipping point where you were like, oh, got it. This is a completely unique thing, and everything else is different, and then the system is a whole nother shit show. So
yeah, exactly. So
yeah.
So, well, I'm reading some stuff. I've just started the Bitcoin Standard, and I'm getting it. Like, it's coming together. Like, the pieces are coming together. There's a story so do you know who Lee Child is? Who he wrote the Jack Reacher series. It just finally
sounds familiar, but I haven't
finally
read it.
came onto Amazon. It's actually really well done, that show. But it's a great series. It's an awesome like mystery thriller series with this great hero. But the point of the story is, I know Lee from my wife and being at some of those conferences in the writers' conferences. Anyway, so as I understand it, Lee had sent his manuscript, the Killing Floor, the first manuscript that he had ever written, and he sent it to his editor to hopefully get some attention and, you know, maybe get published. Or his agent sent it to the editor. He's like, okay, this editor is going to love this, right? So it's really difficult to get published traditionally. If you didn't know, it's like the bar is so high. You have to convince you have to convince somebody to be your agent. Like, you try out to be an agent, yet they work for you. It's kind of a weird thing. But anyways, the agent sends it to the publisher. The publisher takes a manuscript, walks upstairs. It's the end of the day, undoes his tie, sits down on the edge of the bed, takes off a shoe, leans back, is taking off his other shoe as he starts reading the manuscript. And he stops and just keeps reading and reading and reading and reading. And he didn't stop until he finished the book with one shoe on. That's the
wow. That's a captivating book. Wow.
I don't know if it's true, but that's the story I heard. So I'm going with it. Right.
It's a great story.
Anyway, so I sit down on the edge of my bed, and there's a podcast with Pomp and Jeff Booth. Okay. I don't know who Jeff Booth is. I know he's written a book, and I see his name a bunch of different places. I'm like, he looks really smart, you know. And he sounds really smart. So okay, let's sit down. I sit down on my bed with my laptop. Okay, and it's the end of the day, and my wife is like, "Hey, let's cook dinner." We usually cook together, and I'm sitting there. I'm like, "Hold on," and I'm finishing up this interview. It's like an hour long, and I'm like, honey, you've got to come in here and look at this. You can't believe this. And so she's like, what is it? And we sit down, I turn it on. We're sitting on the edge of the bed, and we've got the laptop between us, and we're watching, and I watch it a whole nother time through. She's just like, whoa, wow, oh my God. At the end of it, she goes, do we own it yet? So Jeff, and there's a few others, but that was the point where it all came together. I was like, okay, now I get it. The deflationary forces versus the inflationary forces, and how they're about to clash, and how Bitcoin is a solution to that, to the deflationary problem that we have in the fiat system. We won't get into that because but the point is that it all came together, and I was like, I got it. Now I got it. And it's now
I got it. And so now you got it. You got the golden ticket of aha. How did that change your trajectory, in the world with what you're up to?
Yeah, because, at the time, before that, I was like, well, I don't know if you knew this, but I had been a photographer. I was just doing it for fun. I love to go out and, cool. So I'd love to go out and do some adventure stuff, like really like landscape stuff. And I've been out to, I went out to northern Iceland in the winter to photograph surfers in the Arctic with Chris Burkhardt. And I've been out in Disco Bay in Greenland in the, at midnight in Greenland, photographing icebergs.
Oh my gosh.
Where
can we find this? I didn't know this about you, James.
You can go to my Instagram, and it's on there. So
okay.
I'll start posting some more stuff on Instagram, just because it's fun. I've just been completely absorbed by this other stuff. So, but I'll start doing it again. But anyway, so during the pandemic, I'd started a photography channel to teach people about photography, because when you pick up a camera, it is so overwhelming to understand what you're doing. And so I wanted to simplify it for people, give them like simple reviews, give them teach them how to use their real camera. So many people buy these cameras, they flip it into auto and just start taking photos. And then they pick up their phone, they take their photo, and like, why is my phone photo so much better than this like $5,000 camera? Well, your camera's got AI in it. Your phone's got AI in it. And your camera is expecting you to do the work, right? So I help them understand how to do that, because being an enthusiast and loving to get out there is kind of my therapy. I was like, I can teach you guys this. So my YouTube channel just kind of blew up, and I had all these people asking me to teach them photography. So I started, when I came out here and I had extra time, I was doing some commercial work. I was like, maybe I'll just do some photography while I figure out what part of finance I want to go back into, because I'd have to find a hedge fund or find an endowment or something that I could be, a chief investment officer or something. I wasn't sure what I was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then crypto came along. And my camera, I pick it up on the weekends when I want to go and have fun, but it was like I wasn't looking for a job in traditional institutional money management anymore. I was trying to meet everybody I possibly could to figure out where the opportunity is for somebody like me with my background and my experience and my knowledge, and how I can not just work in this world and be part of this community for the remainder of my working life, but to help bring this to everybody, to help fix this system that is so broken, to help the people who need it the most. And so I started my newsletter. I started teaching people. I started writing threads that kind of teach people like how somebody like me would approach this, and how, I would look at it, how I might value it, how, how the things that are happening in the macro world, what they mean. Because one of the things that I really hate about the institutional finance world is there's a massive amount of information that you need to know to work in that world. It's not tremendously difficult. Some of it's mathematically challenging, but a lot of it isn't. It's just so much stuff and so many terms and so much lingo and language and how one thing fits into another. And it's just like it builds on itself. And you're not taught any of this in school, like none of it. You're not taught anything about how your personal finances really should be run, how your investments should be run, and how the people who are in the investment world, how they're doing it. And
Or what
so
is money?
what
What
is money?
is sound money? Like, I didn't understand this until I started getting into Bitcoin. I thought I knew, but then it was like, oh my God, there's so much I'm clueless about. And
Exactly.
that was huge. I mean, did you have the same perspective about what money is before and I learned about Bitcoin? I
Well,
mean, is that something that was inherent in how you were operating in the
no,
financial world?
it's a great question. And what I knew was the manipulated money worked well for the system that I was working in.
Mhm.
It just does. Look at what happened in the financial crisis, right? The great financial crisis, the world falls apart, and in swoops the Fed and fixes everything. Stocks recover, bonds are safe again. Yeah, everything just, bonds are marching down forever. They're going to go to zero, which means you're going to make money if you're invested in bonds literally forever. And then, stocks are just going up because there's more money to be invested in. Real estate's going up. It makes it so easy to make money. All these people who think they're so smart that have made money in traditional finance in the last decade, not necessarily. You may have just been long,
Yeah.
so that, and so I knew what money was theoretically, but I didn't really understand, like truly understand, how it affected people who were not in my world.
Right, who weren't close to the printer and close to the manipulation station. Uh,
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great name. That's a great name for it.
it
Exactly.
it
Yeah.
is. It's the manipulation station. And so let me ask you a couple questions.
Yeah.
And wow, by the way, like, congrats, you made it. Woohoo. Um,
Happy to be here. Yeah.
I mean, like, that's a journey, and I can relate, some of the paths where it's like, nope, you're not doing this anymore. Like, everything's changing and you don't have a choice. Like, you have to make a new choice because this other one that you thought was happening.
The universe
And
has a funny way of directing you to where you want to be. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Right.
And I mean, oh, what a wild ride. It's a long, strange.
Yeah.
Um, so a couple things. You're the co-founder of Looking Glass Education with a bunch of wonderful, wonderful humans. And Looking Glass Education is, helping people with financial education, Bitcoin education. How is that going? I got to interview
It's
Seb and
awesome. Yeah.
Dahlia last
Yeah.
week, who are amazing.
They're
Um,
awesome.
Great team. You guys have such a killer team, and Greg Foss and everybody. Like, wow, what a collective, good-hearted, genius humans. Like,
I
help us
can't I can't take any credit for that. I mean, I'm there as a co-founder to help, push forward the effort. And I would say that I'm more along the lines of on the advisory board. Greg
Mhm.
and Greg's really pushed this thing extremely well. I mean, like, he's got a big voice, he's got a huge following, he's got a great presence. I mean, the guy he's been key to this to get it going on that side. On the other side, the guys who are actually doing all the work, I can't take credit for that. I mean, these guys really have done a tremendous job, an incredible job. So what they did was, who they are. You've got Seb Bunny, you've got Daz Bia, you've got Jason Sansoni, you've got
Mhm.
Dahlia Plot, you've got Max, who's Pleb Music on Twitter. They have done such a tremendous job of putting this program together. It is, you go to the website, and you had them on recently, right?
Yeah, Seb and Dahlia were on, and it was
Right.
great. Yeah.
Right. You just said it. So you go to the website, and there's a course that you can take, and it's all about sound money and what is money and how it's evolved and and it leads you down this path. And it's kind of like um, through the looking glasses. It's a reference, the reference, and so you
Mhm.
go down that rabbit hole, and at the end, there's never an end. But at some point, you realize Bitcoin, and you're like, oh. So it's not this thing where we say, here's why Bitcoin, but we just say, this is what's going on. And then the logical conclusion is, oh, Bitcoin. Okay, that makes sense. It all comes together. So it's meant to help people from any background, whether you're an attorney or a doctor or a maid, or you're, a fireman, or, like, it doesn't matter. It's meant to speak to everyone, no matter what your experience, education, knowledge, whatever it is. Like, get you all on the same playing field, level it. This is where we are. This is how it works in layman terms, so you can understand it. And you can check off each course, each module, and it just automatically says, here you are in your next. So you log back in, and here you are in your next one. So you could do it all in a weekend. You could do it all in a night. You could do it over the course of months, whatever you want to do, however your time is set up. And at the end of it, there's deeper dives. There's you can jump around. You can move around the website easily, but they're some of the best podcasts that Greg and Jason and some of those guys have done. My newsletters are on there. The ones that the Informationist, where it teaches you one complicated concept, and it's just broken down super simple terms. So, like yield curve control, or I don't know, the Fed put or something. So you hear these terms, you're like, okay, I keep seeing this on Twitter everywhere. What the hell does it mean? Like, what does it really mean?
Mhm.
I kind of have an idea, but what does it really mean? So I try to help people get I try to stay on top of what the hot things are. And at some point, everybody will know the hot things, and we'll just keep going. But the point is to make it accessible. Those are in the deep dive section there. So when people want to know a little bit more about, what's going on and how it all works, and how Bitcoin might be the answer or may fit into that issue that's going on. So, but they're awesome. They're great. I can take very little credit for the build out of it, but I'm happy to be part of the group and happy to help promote it in any way we can. It's free, and it's awesome. Yeah.
It really, and that's like such a key component to like the Bitcoin ethos, is having free education for people. And I feel like that's such an important um, distinction between a lot of financial education and Bitcoiners and Bitcoin education, because it very much supports, like, this is for everybody to understand it. And we obviously all look right or wrong way to learn Bitcoin. Like, you're going to learn it the way that you learn it,
Right.
through your own of information consumption. And so I really admire that so much about this community. It's not
Yeah.
exclusive, it's very inclusive. Bitcoin really is designed for the world. It's designed for everybody. And I saw somebody, I don't know, they put a post the other day somewhere. It's like, there's too many Bitcoin podcasts or something like that. And I was like, there'll be
No.
too many Bitcoin podcasts when Bitcoin is ubiquitous, and then when there's
Right.
hyper Bitcoinization, and then we're not going to be needing to talk about it as much,
Yeah,
but
like the Bitcoin
this,
conference won't be that big of a deal. It'll be a bunch
yeah,
of institutional investors there, giving their cards to each other and talking about Web 5 or something. I mean, like
yeah, or
it's just
Web
not going to be.
11
It's
or
not going
whatever.
to whatever one we're on. It won't
Yeah.
be what it is today. That's right.
No,
That's
but
right.
I think it's there's so much awareness to be raised in the world. Like, so my ex-husband was a hedge fund manager as well, and he had a small little,
Sorry about that.
company firm, fund, and he ended up getting, he's getting his butt kicked in the late. I mean, he did it for almost 15 years, and then he was getting um, his butt kind of kicked in like mid 2012, 13, 14.
Yeah.
So we ended up starting, him and I and the other partner, we started a hard money lending company. So
Oh, yeah.
into hard money lending for fix and flippers. And so he's still doing that now, loving it. He's really glad to do the other thing, but he will not consider Bitcoin point. And I'm trying to get, and this is, I've only understood or really kind of got the aha since last
Mhm.
spring, and like what got my aha was certainly all the money printing got my attention, and I'm like, this doesn't seem like very good, with our purchasing
It's
power
really
and all
not
that.
good.
But like all the human rights stuff and listening to Alex Gladstein and learning about, people who aren't in a country where the dollar is, the reserve currency, and like just watching like how people could like escape these authoritarian regime, and have
Yeah.
Bitcoin start over again, even if they got robbed of their physical stuff. And so that was like the biggest, like, oh, this use huge, and this is
Yeah.
something that it is freedom, and it is for that made total sense to me. And that's when I was like, okay, shit coins be gone. Um, you know,
I think, yeah.
but
Yeah.
I
That's, and
started
yeah.
trying to share all this with him. And if you're listening, Steve, I love you. You got to listen to this podcast with James.
Well,
But,
and
you know,
honestly, I think
yeah,
everybody, like you just said, everybody comes at it from a different angle, and that's an important angle. It's a very important angle, and I think that people like me or Steve, it might it take a minute to get to that spot. Um, Even though of course, in my heart, I want. That's how I'm reformed. I understand like this system has not been great for everybody. It's been terrible for people, and I'm
it's been,
I'm
yeah,
ashamed to have been a part of it. Absolutely ashamed to have been a part of it. And you know, but if you're entrenched in that world, you don't. You can pretend you care and you can talk like you care, but you don't care. You just don't care. So and so, now, as far as understanding Bitcoin as something that actually has value, something that actually has fundamental value, well, that is the easiest step to make there is, and this is not that, look, Bitcoin is not just digital gold. It's not. It's so much more than that. That's not,
mhm,
but that's a good starting point to understand that next step, because what is going to happen in my belief is that institutions are going to start buying Bitcoin in earnest, right? So you've got, I just said this today, the five largest institutional money managers, asset managers own 30, they control $30 trillion of money.
wow,
That's over 5% of our, just our liquid global assets, right? So BlackRock, Vanguard, Fidelity, State Street, Morgan Stanley, um, you know, they own, they control so much money. But once firms like that come in to the space in earnest, I know that BlackRock has been buying some. You've seen Fidelity put out reports on it. They're working on getting 401ks the ability to add Bitcoin to 401ks this year. So it is happening. But when it happens in earnest and they figure out that this needs to be a separate asset class because it can be a store of value once we tamp down the volatility. The volatility will decrease as more money comes into it. It's just the way it works. But at some point, Bitcoin will overtake the market value of gold. The total addressable market of gold, of Bitcoin, is way beyond gold. I mean, the total addressable market has to include bonds, right? It has to include real estate. It has to include, and obviously include stocks. So if you look at all of the assets in the world, now these are a little bit older numbers. They come out of the last quarter of last year, because the BIS and they don't really release these timely. But let's just talk in general terms. They're so big it doesn't really matter. But you've got $120 trillion worth of stocks, $140 trillion worth of investment bonds, whether they're sovereigns or corporates or high yield, whatever they are, not debt, but investable bonds. You've got $300 trillion of real estate that's coming down. You've got $30 trillion of art and collectibles, another $10 trillion of gold. That's not all, investment, but close enough. Okay. So you're talking about, at that point, you're talking about $600 trillion worth of investment assets. Then you've got M2 on top of it. All of the savings and the money market accounts, like anything that is like cash. You've got $120 trillion there in the world, right? So you're talking about over $700 trillion of capital in the world. Now, if you just have your average asset manager put 1% of their fund, of their assets into this as a separate asset class, knowing that it will be like digital gold as your stepping point, just 1%, that gets you to a $350,000 Bitcoin. 2%,
Wow.
$700,000. 3%, over $1 million. Now, here's the thing, though. Why is it important for the people you talked about? So that's just as an investment. That's easy for people from my world to understand. Okay, I get it. Sure. It won't be 3%, but you know what? Yeah. But if it is, that's where it's going on that basis alone. However, when we talk to guys like Greg Foss, he talks about it as it being a credit default swap on a basket of sovereigns. What he's talking about is he's saying that it's an insurance contract against the collapse of currencies. Okay, we're going to see currencies collapse. It's going to happen, and we're seeing with the yen right now. The yen's in the battle of its life right now. Right? People don't realize it, but this thing is so it's teetering. They're playing a game of chicken with the Fed. If you want to know more about that, I talked about it with Preston yesterday. You can get deep into. We get deep into it. That it's coming out next week. So, but the thing is with Bitcoin as insurance is, think of it this way: if you have 1% of your net worth in Bitcoin, just 1%, okay, and you have an event that Bitcoin ends up swallowing currencies because of it becoming the reserve asset of the world, just 1%, that's going to go up 100 times in value. Do the math on just the number of coins, the amount of fiat that's out there, and if you have just 1%, you'll be wealthier by a factor of what you are now. It not only will save your portfolio, but you'll end up having multiples of value in your portfolio because everything will collapse into it. Now, look, if your 1% goes to zero, if I'm wrong, if everybody that you and I know is wrong about this, so what? You've lost 1%. Who cares? Right. But it's you pay way more than 1% on your health insurance, your car insurance, your house insurance. You're paying way more than 1% on that. Wait, why wouldn't you insure your money? You've got federal insurance on some deposits, but if the stock market goes to zero, you don't have any insurance on that. If the world collapses and currencies hyperinflate in a trajectory that we can see, decades out and maybe even closer, why wouldn't you do that? It makes perfect sense. So
I know he talks about like, oh, people are just allocating 1%. Why bother? And I think this was such a great explanation. So I can't wait to, he's on the way back from his right now, so we get to talk this week.
I actually wrote a whole thread about why it's an insurance.
Is it on Twitter, like a Twitter thread? Okay, I'll find it.
Thread. Just yeah, you can search for it. But it's the most important thing to realize is that, look, everybody, when you say, oh well, the dollar will never hyperinflate. Okay, well, first of all, I think it would be the last one. Okay. Second of all, I do think that the dollar and another currency will end up being the reserve currencies of the world. However, if I'm wrong and it does inflate, like, did you ever think we're going to go into lockdown for almost 2 years from a pandemic? Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. Did you ever think that we'd print this much money? I mean, trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars? Nope. We never thought that this would happen. But now we're in a situation where all bets are off. Every bet is off. And if you think that we couldn't have a collapse in confidence in fiat currencies, you're kidding yourself. You're just stuck in the old narrative of the system. Now, do I want that? Hell no. Do I want hyper Bitcoinization? Hell no. That will not be helpful. An orderly process of this becoming the reserve asset of the world first, and then eventually, in our lifetime or not, becoming the reserve currency, that would make sense. And that would hurt the fewest people, and it would help the most, in my opinion. Because if you have hyper Bitcoinization in the next 5 years, I mean, you want to talk about anarchy. It'll be lawless. So we don't want that, not that I have any control over it.
Right.
Not that, but anyway, that's the whole point.
And like, part of the reason I call this Bitcoin is like, how do we have a peaceful transition to our future and involve Bitcoin? Obviously, I mean, that's like one of my secret sauces to bring people together, but I believe like we all need to have like a solid relationship with Bitcoin and with money, and I don't think we're certainly not there right now. And it's causing clearly physical problems, mental health problems. It's caused destruction. It's causing strife between people within their own families and their communities and nations. And it's like, how can we avoid this necessary violence and suffering that we experience due to this old system and due to corruption and due to greed and due to programming in our minds that think this is how we have to survive? And it's like, I'm the least, like, you're a hockey player and competitive or the New York Stock Exchange. Like, I'm the least competitive person you will ever meet on the planet. I'm not competitive at all. I'm kumbaya, let's bring us all together, but like all that is really nice. But if it doesn't,
I'm reformed. Remember, I'm reformed.
You're reformed. I get it. But if you don't, none of that stuff works, and it can't survive if you don't have this sound, and that was kind of a missing ingredient in my life and mental path, because it was like, yeah, we can do all this meditation, musical fairy dust in the world. It's like, no, if people are starving and if they don't have energy and all the things, like, those hierarchy of needs, forget it. You have to have your survival stuff in place.
Yeah,
so
there'd be no vinyasas without food. So
no vinyasas, none of that, and and there'd be no music, right? Because we wouldn't have like sources to go play and enjoy, these wonderful things in life.
And that's what I love about Jeff Booth's his assertion is that as we go, as this solves the sound money problems, and we go into a deflationary world that actually makes sense, then you'll have more time to do things like that too. You'll free up time And I'm interested to see where the arts go and, what happens there, because suddenly think about it. Like if you look at how much technology costs now versus what it did 25 years ago. All these things should be freeing us up to do more. But unfortunately, the system we live in demands us to do more to keep up with inflation, which, as we've seen this year, is virtually impossible.
And so what are your predictions with what's going to happen, do you think, with real estate? What's going to happen? Because right now, the rates going up, mortgage rates are super high.
Yeah.
And to me, so that means the banks are going to start getting higher money, and then the people who own property are going to lose value. So we're going to have another transfer if that happens. What happens there with people?
Well, what's going to happen is you're starting to see it is bids for houses start evaporating. And the reason is that, 2 years ago, a mortgage on a house, let's say that the average mortgage on a house for the average house at that price point, what was about $1,000 or $1,100. Well, now, with housing prices up so much, and with the interest rates doubling, the 30-year mortgage rate doubling, houses have to decrease in value by 50% in order to have the same monthly payment.
Yeah.
So for you to afford the same house, you have to buy it at half the cost. It's not going to work because of interest rates. So people are being priced out of houses. And so obviously demand is going to decrease pretty rapidly here. And I think we're seeing it decrease very rapidly. There's the Case-Shiller index you can follow. It's not done daily, but it's a little bit in arrears. But if you pay attention to what real estate agents are saying and what they're seeing in various cities around the nation, demand is coming. It's falling off a cliff, and so that means that prices are going to come down. So what does that mean? People have less equity in their house. They can borrow less. They'll feel less secure in taking risk in places.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the same time, we're seeing energy and food costs skyrocket. Obviously, everybody's talking about it. Oil and gas and energy prices going up has a major impact. It's the number one input for the production of and distribution of food. So that is going to obviously mean that people can't afford discretionary goods. They're not going to Target to buy a knickknack or an extra thing in the kit for the kitchen because they don't have the money. They're deciding they're going to buy food and buy that tank of gas to get to their job. So I think, and as you saw this morning, you may have seen that our producers, the purchasing managers index came out, and it was kind of dismal. And that's telling you that it's a forward-looking index, and it's the managers who purchase the raw materials and goods that they end up selling to the manufacturers and retailers. They're the manufacturers that are making the stuff. It's the leading indicator before it gets to the retailers, right? And if their confidence is down, that means that confidence in pricing goes down going forward. So it's just an indication that and at the same time, unemployment rate is going up, another and we're raising rates, tightening into it, which we raise rates using data that's old and stale. And we know that because the Fed has said that they're reactionary. So you're tightening rates on old data as new data and forward-looking data is coming out saying, hold on, maybe we want to tap the brakes here a little bit instead of slamming on the brakes on the economy. Maybe we just hold on, let's just tap a little bit and see where we're at. But the problem is we are at 1.5 to 1.75 range of interest rates right now. That's the Fed funds rate. And we need the rate to get up to a certain level in order to give us the room to decrease. So when the Fed does hit the pause button and then eventually pivot, they can actually lower rates without having to go negative because we have no room right now. So if we stopped here and we started lowering rates, well, we're going to go negative before you know it. And I mean, then you've got the same thing that happened in Europe, where you've got last fall, we had over $15 trillion of negative nominally yielding bonds, which means that you put your money in the bank and you get less back. Like you're paying for them to watch it for you. That's absolutely ludicrous. You've worked your tail off for that money. You give it to the bank and they're going to take some of it just for the pleasure of watching it for you and getting to loan it back out. Absolutely ludicrous. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. And I think that unfortunately, Valerie, I don't think that we're going to have a soft-ish landing. I think we're gonna hit the skids here pretty hard. Do I think it's going to happen tomorrow? No, it's going to happen over the next couple of months. And then you're going to see prices come down for all these discretionary goods that people just can't afford. The Target and Walmart prices are going to plummet. Everything but food and energy is going to plummet because energy is a structural issue. Food is keyed off of energy. Now we're going to give tax breaks on energy. That's a mess. That does nothing to the price of energy, because as you give people money back, the demand just stays the same. The demand's going to move up, so the price is going to stay the same. It's going to go with the demand, right? So it doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
So if you had the mind, the magic I can heal me world of the situation, like what's the move? I mean, what is a move that could be made,
They're
or
cornered.
several moves? It's just, what do we do?
They're cornered. There's no good move. There's really no good move. You hike up rates and you have a harder landing than you want. Hopefully you don't go into a full depression like we're going into recession. It's just how bad. You hike them up as fast as you can so you have room to lower them, hoping that you don't absolutely decimate the economy. That's the plan. Will it work? I don't know. I think we're in a period where in September, October, if we're still raising rates, I'm going to be surprised if we're raising rates through the election, because it's political too. I mean, you've got the election coming up, and of course the White House doesn't want us raising rates going into a recession, making the economy worse as you're having that party trying to get reelected. It's what it is. They don't want that. So you've got to factor that in. Magic wand, I would have raised rates I would have printed less and raised rates way back when. Now, that's easy for me to say. I'm not sitting in that chair. Of course, Bitcoiners were saying it for, over a year now. Hey, it's getting out of control. Like, inflation's going to be a problem. We printed all this money, but they wanted to let it run a little bit. Just let it run a little bit. And that's political. That's what it is. So if we extract politics from the Fed, stop their manipulation, that would have been the best thing to do. But we're already where we're at. There's no great answer, truly.
Yeah, it is the current show.
And anybody who says they know exactly what they should do or what's going to happen is full of shit, because
Well,
you
yeah,
don't
because
know.
it really is like you push on one lever and something else falls apart. And if this thing's going to fall apart, there's no, it's not, that doesn't, like, I haven't seen any great answers either. It's just like, buckle up,
Buckle
buttercup.
up, Buttercup. It's coming.
Buckle up, buttercup. We're going for
It's
a
coming.
freaking ride here.
Yeah, yeah.
And, and that's what, not financial advice. What do you suggest for like a person who has a mortgage or who is, do they should you sell and get equity out now
No.
and go
What are
buy
you
some
gonna?
Bitcoin,
I don't.
and go
No,
rent,
it's gonna
or
be, it's gonna be hard to. No, I don't think so, because it's going to be hard to find something that you can afford. Here's why: you wind up locking in a home at a higher rate for less home. That makes no sense.
yeah.
You're more levered to a return in real estate values, which I don't think that this is the cycle that we blow up. I think we've got a few cycles still before we implode. They may be coming in faster and more furiously, but I don't think this is it. So if it's me, I don't want to move out of my home and go lock in a higher interest rate. I don't want to move
But
out
if
of
you
my
rent,
home. You're going to be renting a smaller place for the same amount of money. That doesn't make any
Yeah.
sense either. So to me, if you're okay on your rent, on your mortgage, if you're not stressed, keep that mortgage. You're borrowing money at for dollars that are going to be worth less in the future. So you're paying off a loan that, as the dollar inflates, you're going to, and assuming that your wages keep with inflation, you're able to pay off that loan with dollars that are worth way less. So, it makes sense to keep the mortgage. That's number one. I wouldn't be doing that. Number two is I would consider holding some cash here. If you're sitting on a pile of cash, don't go all in on anything yet. In my opinion, of course, I have to say, like, and I really mean this, Valerie, I cannot give advice to somebody that I don't know their full situation.
Of course.
Like,
Yeah.
they really depends individually. Like, how much debt do you have? How many, like, do you have credit card debt? Do you have, how many investments do you have? Like, but if you're sitting on a pile of cash, well, Bitcoin is at a great price right now. And if you've been waiting to buy some, yeah, go ahead and buy some. Buy a chunk, but then leave dry powder, because we could have another leg down here. You just don't know. And it'll allow you that ability to pick off some things that really get beat up if the Fed stays obstinate and they keep tightening into a recession, and the stock market falls apart and it drops another 10, 20, 20, 30%. Well, Bitcoin's a leading risk indicator. That's going to go down first. So you might get another swap at that. And then the other thing is, you may get another swap at these phenomenal technology companies that shouldn't be trading at multiples that they might wind up trading at for a short period of time. You can grab the Googles, the Apples, the Microsofts, like, these are companies that are not going away. They're virtual monopolies. So they'll give you a chance to get those. If you need income, you can buy solid income generating value stocks. Like, that's not a bad choice right now. They're a little bit defensive, the healthcare, there's stuff that people may not ethically agree with, um, uh, like the tobacco companies or the energy companies, but some of them are cash cows they're starting to generate some good cash returns that you can actually kind of park some cash in. It's individual. You have to do a lot of research to figure out which ones. But if I was going to reallocate my portfolio, if I was sitting on a bunch of cash right now and I need income, I would be doing some of those things. So
Cool. And so for all of you listening, I see a lot of people out there. They're like, I'm selling my house and my car and my furniture. All I'm buying is all Bitcoin right now. And it's like the excitement, but it's also like, cover your ass too.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm a risk. I've been in risk management forever, and I cannot go all in on anything. I've got public equity, I've got private equity, I've got venture capital. I've got obviously Bitcoin and gold, and I can't go all in on anything. Nothing. It just doesn't. It wouldn't make sense to me. So
it's good. And you've obviously got a breadth of experience and knowledge about this. So I think it's great. And I know we are on crunch. We have 1 minute left. So
we have 1 minute. What's the last question? What's the last question?
Last question. Okay. Last question is for James Lavish. What's your song?
Whoa.
We weren't expecting that.
I was not my favorite, like the one to really pump me up.
Kind of like, I need to fucking slay this, and I'm going into a meeting. I got to get my energy on. And what's my jam?
Oh man. Well, I actually I've been listening to a lot of that old 90s grunge music recently, to tell you the truth. I don't know why. I want to go back to the simpler days.
Nirvana jam?
Yeah, like Pearl Jam and the Goo Goo Dolls, and
Nice.
yeah. So, just, that's what I've been listening to lately. But I will listen to virtually anything. I love music. I'll listen to anything. So it could be jazz, it could be blues. It could be some country. I'm a little tired of that in Texas for 20 years, but you know, I'll listen to anything. Yeah.
Right on.
Classic
I love
rock.
it.
I love the classic rock stuff too.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm an old Motown girl, an old classic rock girl, and
Yeah.
obviously doing EDM and all that. But I love all kinds of music. I have good stuff. So that is
Awesome.
so awesome. Well, wow, this has been amazing talking with you. I know we could talk for hours on this because it's so
Yeah,
fascinating,
we
all the
could.
tentacles and everything. And I hope it was good for you, James. It was good
It
for
was
me.
great. It was
um,
fantastic. Thank you for having me.
you got the deep voice in there. So, okay. So everybody, you guys can follow James on Twitter at James Lavish. You can also definitely go subscribe to his on the Informationist newsletter. It's awesome, and you will become smarter if you read it. And,
Guaranteed.
and you can go to
Absolutely guaranteed.
James. Yeah, I guarantee jameslavish.substack.com, and definitely go check out lookingglasseducation.com. And we'll love this site and this project that these guys are. So, any last things, James, to say to the
No,
world about yourself and Bitcoin and all the good stuff?
no, enough about me, but just chill. Everybody, this is honestly, this is a tough period. This last week has been kind of brutal for some people. So it's been good to be on here and laugh. Thank you so much for having me. It's been super enjoyable. I love your vibe in the podcast. It's awesome.
Right.
And but honestly, I've been through a bunch of these markets, and they can be brutal. They can wear on you. They can make you feel terrible. They can make you feel stupid. They can make you feel worried. They can make you feel stressed. But if you just kind of remove yourself and remember that these are just these things happen, and they're cycles, and you get through the cycle, and you just keep going. Life goes on, man. Just keep going. So
Keep on going. Yeah, it lends. That's such
yeah,
good advice, James. It's like that long-term perspective. It's life-saving for sure because it's scary when you're in the middle of it.
absolutely.
But we've got each other. So reach out and connect with all of us. And I know, we're on a journey together called life. So
Word.
yeah, let's do it. All
All
right,
right.
everybody, let's take a quick inhale and we'll say goodbye. Inhale. All right. Peace, love, and warm aloha to y'all. Thanks for tuning into Bitcoin Peace and Music. I'm your host, DJ Valerie B. Love, and at James Lavish for joining us. It's such a
Thank
blessing.
you.
Yay.